Our world is going through rapid, massive changes, be that political, economic, social, or even cultural. All these shifts cannot be handled with old approaches because these complex present day challenges cannot be resolved with old approaches because they are no longer good enough for us. Today, we are dealing with dramatically changing advocacy, political and business environment. And for many rising challenges of our time, we must evolve, push forward bold new ideas born from experience, empathy, and understanding. So, what am I referring to? I am referring to campaigns for gun violence, that is NRA lobby, abortion rights, COVID-19 vaccination campaigns, political organization for minorities such as women of color and LGBTQ, income inequality, and even police violence. To talk about this, we have a change maker, an action taker with us, Jess O Connell. She is a political operative and strategist with decades of experience, having been on the front lines of some of the country's toughest battles, where she has helped leaders and their teams to communicate and create change. Thank you, Jess, for joining me today for my show. Truth be told, I know you're a very busy lady and you have like working so hard, and I was just reading through your background and it was just like awesome. Okay, can you just explain us why you have an extensive experience working with people. So what are basically campaigns and why they're required in a society?
Well, campaigns are such an important part of a healthy democracy. It's an opportunity for an exchange of ideas. It's an opportunity for candidates and people that want to hold power and write laws in the country, an opportunity for them to hear from people, be questioned. And it's an opportunity for debate, which I think is one of the most important things that we're feeling, certainly here in the United States right now, is with such division throughout the country, being able to have a free-flowing exchange of ideas, hopefully free from violence, and a structure and a system that allows us to do that and then vote for who we believe will best represent our interests is really, really important. Campaigns themselves continue to change and evolve over time, how they are run, but ultimately what it's really about, what a political campaign comes down to is getting your message out to voters. It's communicating your vision for your community. It's communicating the issues that you care about and hopefully some solutions that you would propose. And it's building a coalition of like-minded people who may look and feel and be different from each other, but can come together to help solve the challenges that we face together and also to embrace the opportunities. It's not always just the challenges that we face, but how we move forward in progress together. So campaigns are so vital to a healthy democracy, both the protection of campaigns, the protection of candidates.
Okay, my question would be like, because you have been working for so long, but the thing is like, okay, nowadays with the newer generation, because the technology is changing, so people, they don't want to, because I see it in my community, people don't want to take in-person involvement, and they don't want to give that kind of time, so they are more like social media warriors. So they are just waiting to click a button and just say, even when we have to say happy birthday to anybody, we just want to write it down. We don't want to call and we don't want to go and stand there. So how do these campaigns grow strategically?
It's such a great observation. It's such a good question. How we gather in community is changing and it's evolving. That's true for our electoral work and campaigns. It's true for everything we do. Like you said, birthday parties, so much of what we're doing. I think as it relates to campaigns and how elected officials or people who want to be elected officials reach people, it is about meeting people where they're at. and
Yeah. Yeah.
diversifying that. And so there are still plenty of people who do want to show up in person, especially in what is hopefully a close to a post-COVID era where we can gather again in person. There's a lot of people hungry for that community. They missed being together. They missed the nuance and subtleties and being in community in that way. That said, there's plenty of people, you mentioned young people, plenty of people where you will find them is online. And if you want to inspire them and engage them and hear from them, you have to learn how to be on those platforms, how to communicate, how to make yourself available. So I've been doing campaigns for over 2 decades, and it's evolved so much. And that's the nature of the work. It's the nature of being a public servant. You have to meet people where they're at. And if they're now on TikTok or
Yeah.
on Instagram or
Yeah.
where they are, you've got to show up there too. It's just like a virtual town hall.
It's
And,
so just so surprising. It's like people just want to, just a younger generation, they're like, oh, did you see that campaign on TikTok? And I'm like, okay, are we talking about something serious? Because probably I'm old fashioned. I don't get it, because I feel like going in person, meeting people, talking to them, looking at their expression makes hell of a difference. But kids and the newer generation, the new voters, because I worked extensively for the last election, so it was so difficult to push the voters to go out and vote even.
yeah, I think that, well, the good news is for voters, we had record-breaking youth voter turnout in this last election, both, and it sustained through some of the midterms, but certainly in 2020. So over the last 4 years, I'm very encouraged actually by the activation and activism of young people. But you're right; they are assessing candidates, and they're learning about the issues in an entirely different way than my generation, yours, etc. And so the way in which they do the work, the way in which they organize, the way in which they want to learn about issues is very different. They're also having a different lived experience, how they came up. I mean, whether it's gun violence, whether it's their job
Yeah.
opportunities when they're leaving school, I mean, their experiences are very different, and how they are dealing with it is very different. That said, I think young people are particularly adept at understanding authenticity, and they are very good at reading people online, on TV, on screens, in a way that you or I might feel more comfortable doing that in person.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so my next question would be like, okay, we are all experiencing, we are also seeing it, we are witnessing it, the rising gun violence in our society. So what do you think, like how can we achieve those goals of impactfully creating a campaign which puts a lot of impact on the real deal people, because the decision makers rather?
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the most complicated issues
Yeah.
for our country right now. When you have a situation where a majority of people in the United States think we need to do something reasonable to prevent gun violence, things that we can agree on, background checks, waiting periods. There's so
Yeah.
much actually that we can agree on. And then you have legislators that are not moving on it because they're
Yeah.
beholden to special interests like the NRA.
Yeah.
This is a real challenge because what you're looking at is minority rule. When the majority of people want something, and the minority of the small group of leaders aren't doing anything, this is really, really problematic. I think that we have to continue to pressure our leaders. We can all agree thoughts and prayers are simply not enough. We are normalizing in our culture not just guns, but we're normalizing the violence that comes from
Yes.
guns.
Yes. Exactly.
I have a 5-year-old son who's about to start kindergarten, and the very first thing I thought is, I want him to live through going to school. I do
Yes.
not want him
Yes.
to be in a random situation, and that I would have never thought of that 10, 20 years ago
Yes.
when we had the assault ban rifle act in place, and when that went away. So we know that we cannot solve every problem through laws and legislation, but we certainly can take a chunk out of this, and we can make it harder for people who need mental health help, for people who intend violence on people, to not be able to get weapons into their hands. And I think the pressure, what you're talking about, has to come from all of us. It's multi-generational, it's multiracial, it's multi-gendered. We can agree this is something that we need to prioritize. I think we probably need more dramatic tactics. I think we probably need things that will get and galvanize the attention of politicians in a more meaningful way. That could be around their fundraising. It could be around more protests and demonstrations. But we have to kind of remain steadfast and focused until there's change.
I mean, yeah, it is just because what you had mentioned over here, like sending your little kids to school, because in my neighborhood, I have like 1 block away a little school, you know, like, and those tiny tots are just going there. And every morning, you know, you won't believe it, but I just stand there and I just want to look at them going, because it's normal for me. I'm scared, it's worrisome, and you're just worried about your kids, about the future, because you're just concerned about the fact, like, what are they learning? Just now when we are recording, it happened again in Atlanta. And and then what are we, just sitting ducks? It can happen anywhere. Because I was listening to somebody's beeper on ABC, and they said, like, there was a 7-year-old little girl, and she was just sitting there when there is a shooter in the room. And this is just tough to even understand, because these are the things which we should be concerned about. But before that, let me just take a very quick break, Jess, and we will be right back. And then we are going to talk about issues like abortion rights. We just shed some light on gun violence thing, and then we have to talk about all other political organizations for the minorities. Stay tuned.
During the Move Up sales event at Big Star Cadillac, upgrade your luxury for just $1 down. Move up to the new 2023 XT4 Luxury Collection, $379 a month for 39 months lease with just $1 down. Or purchase and enjoy $1,000 bonus cash. Let Big Star's Cadillac to your door bring you a concierge test drive. Gulf Freeway, just 2 minutes south of the Beltway.
Shop smarter when you shop at Big Star. Shop BigStarCadillac.com.
Hey! Okay.
If you love me enough to tolerate my perfect little pets and all their glorious dander, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat. Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back. Before going on the break, we have Jess O Connell with us. She has been a strategist for the longest time for political organizations and all that. Jess, let me ask you this question over here. Like, what do we know that because we are going through such massive political changes, how can we create like impactful programs if we are talking about, for example, I mean, there are so many issues, but if we are talking about the abortion rights?
Sure. Well, look, I think at its simplest form, there are two things that are the most important, whether it's about abortion rights or any of the issues that are top of mind for so many people in this country right now. The first is using our voices, making sure that we're talking about the issues that are most important to us and our families. Being silent in a time that we're living through right now in this moment is going to be complicit with some of these things that we're seeing. And so using our voices is really important. And we talked a little bit about community building and gathering however we can, whether that's online or in person, to talk about these things, to raise our voices, to raise our hands, and to object. There's, again, whether we're talking about gun violence, even abortion, the majority of people in this country think it should be safe and legal. They may want some parameters around that, but what's happening is a vast overreach from extremism and extreme politicians trying to impose their will and their way on people who do not want it throughout this country. And they won't stop there. Abortion is just the start of this. We're seeing efforts to restrict birth control. We're seeing efforts to restrict some of the medication that helps with abortions through the mail. Now, listen, in terms of how people organize, which is really, I think, the heart of your question, there are many, many, many people in many communities who are raising their voices, working to elect candidates who support their values, fighting back, showing up, going to town halls. We'll be approaching the summer soon. Elected politicians will be coming home from Washington. We need to let them know how we feel about it. In our states, the legislatures, those legislatures are letting out. They're going back to their districts. We need to let them know how we feel about it. That is how we will enact change. But we have to be seen and visible in all ways around these issues, especially around abortion.
Yeah. Okay, you have worked on, because I was looking at the profile, and you have worked in Netherlands and other international countries, and so when you see the issues what we are facing as a nation in the United States, be that gun violence, be that abortion rights, how do you compare that? Because when I have been meeting people and they are foreigners, and they look at us like, really, you guys are dealing with this right now? And they don't have those issues. So how do you compare these?
I think that you really rightly identified the gun issue as being uniquely American, a uniquely American problem. And I agree with you. The friends and colleagues I've worked with around the world, they do not understand it. By the way, neither do we. I don't understand.
Exactly.
We can't solve the problem. There aren't words to answer this for them. Or for us right now. We're going to have to let our actions do the work. I will say, though, that some of the other threats that our country is facing right now are being faced around the world as well. A rise in authoritarianism, suppression of democracy, an erosion of democracy. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot in common with some of the challenges that are happening around the world. Rise in racism. The world is undergoing, the largest migration of people around the world right now, and that has implications, both economic, cultural, racial, religious implications for everyone. And so a lot of the problems we are trying to solve together here in the United States, we're trying to solve globally, but the guns problem remains a really uniquely American outrage.
Which is very unfortunate, actually. Coming towards the abortion, right? I don't know. It might sound like a cliche, or I don't know, because whenever I talk to women and they are facing all that, I still cannot understand. Like, somebody doesn't want to have a kid, or they are having some sort of complications and issues, but they cannot, because in my state right now, in state of Texas, it's not allowed. So and then I was talking to some of the friends, and they keep talking about, do you remember like old days, our moms and grandmothers used to use hangers? And that just gives me chills, because yes, we are dealing with something like that, and there is nothing been, there's so much legislation, there's so much campaigning, there's so much work, so much said already, but nothing is happening. It still feels like we're standing at a standstill, and nothing has been happening. I think even abortion rights is like uniquely American, probably.
Yeah, well, I certainly, the United States is moving backwards on this when most countries are moving forward. We're one of the worst countries in the world now on abortion rights and reproductive health for women, which is, again, an outrage. It's a national outrage. I will say this, that the thing that I think people misunderstand about the legislating of women's bodies and their reproductive health and reproductive rights is that legislating away abortion will not stop abortions. And you just named that. It will simply not stop abortions. It means that women will have to resort to other measures that are less safe. It will mean that women have to wait until they're near death to seek medical care and help. And it only endangers the life of women in this
Yeah.
instance, but it will not eradicate abortions. Women are going to continue to make decisions for their lives and their families. They're just more dangerous right now. I hope that is only temporary. And just to name and to give a little bit of hope around this issue. We have seen electorally, even just anecdotally, since the fall of Roe v. Wade, we have seen ballot initiatives in states. Pro-choice ballot initiatives are winning. So they're either beating back abortion bans or they are moving things forward to protect abortion in their states in places that are historically more like Texas, Kansas, some of these other places where they're winning. I think there have been about 5 elections so far, and choice is winning because people are showing up and unusual coalitions are coming out. And like you said, people who may have felt hopeless, they are not going to let this stand. And so I think that we are going to see abortion on the ballot over the next 18 months. I think this is not done.
Yeah.
This is not something we're going to see the end of. And I think we're going to see a rise in voter turnout. And I think I think that perhaps the anti-abortion legislators and advocates don't realize what they may have unleashed here, because it's one thing to be fighting and advocating for your cause. It's wholly another thing to strip away rights from people who already have them. And that's what's happened now. That feels different to people.
I agree. My last question, and very quickly, I mean, we just came out of the pandemic. I mean, taking the vaccination was also an issue. People were just not willing to cover their faces. They didn't want to take the vaccination. And there were debates. I mean, we were all confined. It was so unprecedented, which ever happened in a lifetime probably. And we were still not even on the same page over there. We were just divided again. How was your experience?
Yeah, I think my experience was the same as everybody's. I think no matter sort of where you fall on this debate, I think it was disheartening to not see and feel our country come together. I will say that I think one of the biggest challenges that we face right now, both in campaigns and in communities, is mis and disinformation. I think we're having trouble keeping pace with social media and the speed at which messaging can move around the world. I think, we're entering into this era of AI. It's not even going to be humans that are generating these pictures and images and information. And I think that we're in a real era where we have to, this is why I think the gatherings, whether it's online or in person, what we've learned through campaigning is that people talking to their neighbors and their friends has the biggest difference of all.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, Jess, for giving us an opinion. I know this is not a long enough time to discuss all the pointers which I wanted to discuss, but you're so right. I must thank you. But as a media, as a part of a media within my community, I think it is important to vet the information. Whatever information you get, you should just first put and look at the facts and then move forward from them instead of just believing it. But when you're talking to people in person and they are giving you their own experiences, yes, that is something to believe on, I guess. Thank you so much, Jess, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Freedom. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy.
With your support in the election, we will defeat Joe Biden in 2024. We will rescue our economy. We will crush inflation. We will stop the invasion on our southern border. We will restore our nation's dignity. There's never been a record as bad as they have, and our country has never been through so much.
Change is possible and progress is worth fighting for. We need to reboot old-fashioned and racist systems that perpetuate a status quo that systematically thrives on marginalized communities. We need to believe in new ideas, new people, and new approaches for solution to shape up our world. Believe me or not, a lasting change to systematic inequalities cannot happen without the authentic input of people that form the diverse fabric of our nation, along with decisive action from decision makers at all levels of our government. Candidates, campaigns, organizations, and movements are constantly working to create meaningful and lasting change. Try to take part in those because it will be bringing a change. Thank you for watching my show with me, Sophia Jamal. Have a great day.